Hi, it's Alaska Granny. I thought I'd share with you today 5 foods that I do not store long term anymore. I'm going to explain to you what those foods are, why I don't store them, and what I use instead. The first food is brown rice. Brown rice is delicious, it's nutritious, it's easy to prepare, it's very versatile, but it has oils in it and so it can go rancid. You can have foods like brown rice in your prepper pantry, but for the longest lasting long-term food storage, you need to store white rice. White rice can last for decades, and you want to have foods for long term that you know is going to be safe to eat, it's still going to be good to eat, and nothing's going to happen to it. You don't want to come to an actual emergency SHTF and find out that your food is unfit to eat. So for the short term, it's great to have brown rice, but for the long term, store white rice. I recently made a video on how I make a lentil brown rice meal in a jar. I'll put a link to that video in case you want an idea of how to use your brown rice. The next food I don't store for long term anymore are egg noodles. Pastas will last forever, but egg noodles have eggs in them, and so the eggs can become spoiled and rotten. So it's great to have egg noodles. They're very nice for different kinds of casseroles, stroganoffs, but use them up within a couple of years. They're not going to last forever like pastas will. Pasta, macaroni, noodles, they just are made basically from flour and water, and so they can last forever. Your dried foods such as rice and pastas need to be stored in an airtight container in a cool, dark, dry place, and they're going to last forever. But egg noodles need to be rotated. Keep an eye on any type of fancy pastas that you have. For example, here I have red lentil pastas, and I'm not really sure how long they will last, so I don't store them long term. I buy them because to me, they're special, they're a delicacy, and so I like to rotate them and use them within a shorter amount of time, like the egg noodles. I keep foods like the red lentil pastas, and I don't keep them in my pantry more than maybe 2 years. Brown sugar, I don't store that for the long term anymore either. Brown sugar is great. It has a delicious flavor, it's moist and creamy, and it's yummy in so many recipes. But the moisture in it can dry out. And so then you have a problem with your brown sugar is hard and it isn't available right when you want to use it. You can put something like an apple slice or a piece of bread in with your brown sugar, seal it up well, and let it sit, say, overnight, and then it can soften up again because you need to add the moisture back into it. You don't need to be concerned with storing brown sugar if you have white sugar and molasses, because you simply blend them together and that's how you get the brown sugar. The molasses is like a byproduct, I guess you would call it, from when they're making the white sugar. Now, white sugar is great to store long term. Store it in a cool, dark, dry environment. Seal it up airtight, but don't use oxygen absorbers with sugar because it can turn it into a big hard brick. And nobody wants to try to break their sugar apart when if you just store it airtight, it can remain nice and granular. If you do live in a humid environment and you find this is clumping up, you can take something as simple as a saltine cracker, drop it in the jar, and then it can help absorb any moisture. White sugar needs to be kept dry and brown sugar needs to be kept moist. Both of them need to be stored in an airtight container. So if you want to have brown sugar in any kind of a situation decades from now, store some molasses. The next food I don't store for long term is yeast. I like to buy the little packets. You can also buy yeast in a jar, and it looks like I'm storing it forever, but I'm actually using the yeast because I have a bread machine, so I like to make bread in my bread machine. I'll put a video to an easy way to make bread in your bread machine, an easy recipe, in case it's something you're interested in. A bread machine is a great way to be able to provide the bread that you need, so then yes, you do need some yeast. It's certainly easy and convenient to use a bread machine when you want to make bread from scratch. It saves a lot of work on the old hands with all that kneading. Instead of packages of yeast for the longest term food storage, I have a sourdough starter. This one's been in my family for so many generations and years that it's got a name. We call him Doan. and it's easy to continue to just have your sourdough starter, continue to feed it a little bit, and even if you go on vacation or you don't want to use it for a while, you can put it in your refrigerator and get it out occasionally and feed it again. You don't have to keep it on your counter and feed it every single day. If you're not making a lot of things with your sourdough starter, don't feel like you have to continue to feed it and discard when you aren't going to be using it, because that seems very wasteful. I've also dried some sourdough so that I could rehydrate it in the future so that dough can live on. So I'll put a link to that video on how to dry your sourdough starter if you want to have some, say, put away with your spices and seasonings is where I have it, so that you'll have it for the longest term. Another food that I do not store for long term is dry kidney beans. Dry kidney beans need to be soaked and they need to be cooked thoroughly. You need to get them to a certain temperature because there's a toxin that's naturally in kidney beans that's not in other beans. So while I don't store dry kidney beans in my long-term storage, I do have plenty of canned beans so that I never have to worry, did I cook them long enough? Did I get them to the correct temperature? It's simple to have some canned kidney beans right in your prepper pantry, and you can usually pick them up for not a lot of money. Finally, the food that I don't store long term is food I don't like. If I don't want it today, I'm not going to want it in the future. And you might say, well, under hardships, you'll eat anything, but wouldn't you rather store foods you actually like? So then, in a hardship situation, you can still continue to eat food that you want, that you enjoy, that you know how to prepare. So if there's foods that you don't like, don't add them to your prepper pantry and your long-term food storage stockpile, because people say, this is what preppers need, this is what you should have, this is what you must have. What matters is what you want, what you are willing to prepare, what your family is willing to eat. That's how you get the best use out of your grocery dollars, buying foods that you actually will use. You don't want to store foods either that you don't want to eat. You want your pantry to be full of foods that you do want to eat. So think about the foods that you will and won't store for long term. Leave us a comment below and tell us, what are those foods? What are your strategies of what kind of foods you want for the longest haul for any kind of a situation in your prepper pantry and your long-term food storage stockpile. If you enjoyed my video, I hope you'll share it with someone else you think might like it. Please subscribe to the Alaska Granny channel.